Welcoming everyone. My name is Ruben Mendoza, and I currently serve as the Housing and Economic Analyst for the Launchpad Collective with Carrillo Group CANY. The Launchpad, what we like to share with folks is it's an innovative mixed use, mixed income model, really pushing the new development status quo in San Bernardino. We want to meet the needs of the whole person and their families, is what we'd like to share with others. We always say that it takes a village to make our mission happen. And we certainly could not be here if it wasn't for the support of our partners and our community coalition. And so, with this Fireside Chat series, we wanted to introduce our community partners so that we could highlight the collaborative nature of our work and also showcase the various disciplines coming together for a common goal of seeing housing production reach the most in need within San Bernardino, but also providing a blueprint for conscious economic development. And so now it is my privilege to introduce our supportive services provider, With Open Arms. Representing With Open Arms is founder and CEO Leslie Evans. Leslie, if you could please share about your background, how is it that you find the organization With Open Arms?
My name is Leslie Evans. I'm the founder and CEO of With Open Arms, Inc. We started out this mission during COVID, actually. We started out in 2019, and we saw the need in Rialto Unified School District at the time where families were being displaced due to the housing crisis and, the growing epidemic at the time. And so we founded the organization by partnering with the district to identify those families who were being displaced, and it kind of grew the organization. We're dedicated to providing housing and supportive services for youth and families experiencing homelessness in San Bernardino. And so the McKinney-Vento Act has been around for a very long time. It's been federally funded, but I'm not really sure if the school districts really have the scope, the capacity to provide the support services that were needed for those individuals. And it was one of the things that I identified in Rialto Unified School District at the time, where there were astronomical numbers of students that were identified. I think at the time there were about 2,500 during COVID who were identified as under the McKinney-Vento designation. And the counselors in the school districts were responsible for keeping the data for those families. And so the services were being provided, but on a very large scale. They were identified, yet there were really no real support wraparound services to get these individuals linked. And so it kind of birthed the work that we were doing to really focus in. I've been doing homeless services for about 15, 20 years. I've worked downtown Los Angeles and Skid Row for 7 of those years, managing HUD and HOPWA funded programs. And so when I moved to the Inland Empire in 2014, I continued to commute to Los Angeles, but then I started identifying the need right in the area in which I moved because my son was a student in the district at the time. And so just partnering and being a part of the parent leadership group, I started being really involved in the work and looking at how I can support the city at the time and the school district with identifying the services that were needed. And so it kind of birthed this. I was already even in LA. I always wanted to run my own organization, was start my own organization, I should say, because of the things that I saw in Skid Row. And I saw so many children out there on the streets of San Pedro who were not in school, who were chronically homeless, or families were chronically homeless, and they weren't getting the support services needed to not only get stable housing, but to remain in the school districts and be able to get the education that's needed and provided for them without the families thinking that they were going to be their children were going to be taken away if they were identified as homeless. And so that was one of the things that I saw the need in. And so that's kind of how we birthed the organization and just providing that service. And here we are 5 years later, actually doing this work, expanding across both counties.
It's really awesome how you're taking that initiative right on your terms to say, hey, I'm here in this new community, 2014, right, moving to the Inland Empire, seeing the same issues that I'm currently addressing in LA and Skid Row. And so bringing the culmination of all of that into with open arms.
Thank you. It was an eye opener to see that, coming from Los Angeles, especially with the abundance of services that the county and the city has in Los Angeles, and then coming to the Inland Empire, where I was in shock to see that there were no service providers specifically for this population, and very, very, very little for any youth programs in the Inland Empire. I mean, I've seen a substantial amount of growth since I came out here 10 years later. But I know that San Bernardino County definitely has a lot more work to do. And so here we are partnering together to try to mitigate some of that initiatives and mitigate some of the things that these children are experiencing.
In your organization, you have a special focus on serving a young demographic. And so I'm sure that's part of the reason that led you to support the Launchpad vision. What other details, what else could you share that led you to support the vision?
I know. I mean, just like you said earlier, the Launchpad has this whole person approach. When I first met Robert, I met him through some of my business partners and some of the staff members that I actually work with. And so they were telling me how I just need to meet this guy and hear his vision. And the one time I met with him, we met at my office, him and Yvette, and it just kind of went from there. The passion that I saw in his initiative, and it was something that I had never seen before. What he wanted to do, and he was adamant about, I'm going to get this off the ground. And so, looking at what the launch pad was shaping into, just looking at the blueprints of it, and then saying, hey, we're looking at the same population. We're both kind of new to the community, but we're doing innovative work that nobody else is doing out here. And so it just was imperative that we continue this work, and then to come out and see the viewing of the documentary that he made. I was sold then, on just the passion that he had with these kids. It was like, man, I mean, I know for me, sometimes people tell me, you're just too passionate. You can't, but you can never be too passionate about the work when it comes to children and families who were on the street. And so that's kind of what birthed this whole collaborative with the Launchpad. It was like our visions kind of collided. They kind of we were on the same mission, the same path. And that was really doing innovative work because, hey, we all know that there's a homeless crisis here in San Bernardino County, and all of the counties across the nation. But, to specifically target youth and those families who are displaced while these kids are still trying to maintain an education, get good grades. We see chronic absenteeism, and how can we as an organization get these kids educated and still get them stable in housing? And so to see the development piece of that, and then coming in and to provide that wraparound support services to ensure that once they get into this housing, we link them to the supports that they're going to need, and then also helping our students who are aging out of the system, who may not have a place to go to be able to sustain in life. And so teaching them those skills, getting them ready for the workforce, getting them just teaching basic life skills that they may not have, looking at that. And just like I said, just our visions were so intertwined that it was just, like I said, it seemed like we were brought together for a reason.
I especially liked how you highlighted the partnership from the development perspective with the integrated supportive services. And so as you know, right, in this field, it's important that, hey, the housing is not just here for you, but also X, Y, and Z, because recognizing, like you said, right, that whole person and meeting the needs of the whole person.
Absolutely. And with families specifically, with McKinney-Vento, it's a little unique because we're servicing the child who's in the school system, yet it doesn't negate their family. Their family has to come along. So we're treating the whole family. A lot of times, what we're seeing is that parents are out of work. they don't have life skills themselves. A lot of times there's some, histories of DCFS and, all types of barriers that they're experiencing and why they are in these situations. And so being able to say, hey, we have something right here in San Bernardino, right here in the community. You don't have to go out far. You can stay here. You can stay at your home schools. Your kids continue to stay because most of the time, because they're homeless, they're moving from district to district. They're transient, and a lot of times kids, again, are dealing with the chronic absenteeism. They're not meeting their grades. A lot of these kids drop out by the time they get to high school and near graduation. They're not meeting their A through G requirements because they can't stay stabilized. So the mission of With Open Arms is to ensure that not only that they get the stable housing, but they're provided that support service so that those kids can stay in school and receive the education and be able to graduate. Because again, those are one of the things that we also see is that the high dropout rate. So a lot of these kids that are dropping out are experiencing some type of housing instability. And so if we can work together again as you all are building the platforms and building the homes, we're there to make sure that they stay in those homes and have the support needed in order to retain housing.
I think that's perfectly said. Couldn't have said it any better. And that's exactly right. We want to make sure that they can retain and not continue that cycle of being transient, either in a motel, in your car, being doubled up or
Right.
tripled up, whatever that may look like for that young person and their family.
Absolutely. Emergency services is it's good for a short term, but what about getting them stable for long-term stability?
Hmm.
And once they're stable, being able to actually receive that service because in emergency housing, with time limits, they can't, a lot of times they can't receive the full scope of services that are really actually needed. And so the work that you all are doing over at Launchpad to create this housing, we really, really are just excited and elated to be a part of providing the support that they're going to need to retain that.
And back at you, it's twofold, right? And so again, going back to the intro, we couldn't do this without our partners, and that includes you with Open Arms and your team. And so it's been exciting to collaborate and to continue share space with each other.
Absolutely.
What is something that someone should know about with Open Arms, as it relates to the development of Launchpad? You can mention anything specific, anything you like that you haven't shared already.
So, like I said earlier, we're not just focused on emergency housing. We're focused on long-term solutions and that complement, I would say, long-term solutions that complement Launchpad's affordable housing vision. We want to ensure that the work that we're doing, especially with the experience that I have overseeing HUD programs and the designing of sustainable housing programs, having that other lens of it, of actually developing housing, develop for you all as a launch pad, developing the housing for youth, the housing initiatives that we align with Open Arms brings our expertise to the service coordination part of that, the compliance, the trauma-informed care, and all that stuff that's going to be able to help them remain stably housed.
I love it. I love everything. Anything else that you would want to share outside of these questions that we've asked you? It could be about anything.
Well, that's just we're like I said before, we're elated and we're incredibly proud to be a part of this project with the Launchpad's leadership and the visionary and their dedication to creating like real life, long lasting impact on youth. We align and we believe that every young person deserves to be safe. They need to have a safe place to live and the opportunity to reach their full potential. And like I said, if they're not graduating from high school, if they're not meeting their grades, if they're not, sustaining in school, they can't reach that full potential. And with the creation of the kitchen and, just that innovative piece that you all are creating with the housing, to have a daycare downstairs. So, right there, we're not dealing with all of those different barriers that most single moms are dealing with. Teen moms. I was a teen mom. I had my first child at 16 years old, and everybody told me I wasn't going to do anything, I wasn't going to succeed. And now my daughter is 30 years old, my first child, and she's very successful. And here I am. So it's all about who you get behind. I had a bunch of mentors. I worked for Los Angeles Unified School District for 10 years, and I had some amazing, amazing mentors throughout my life. And so I am just grateful and know what it's like to be a child, having a child, and what it takes to be able to break barriers, to get to, like I said earlier, meeting that full potential, knowing what barriers you're facing, knowing what it feels like to actually not know where your next meal is going to come from. That's where my passion comes from in doing this work. Being a youth, surviving out here, trying to raise a kid, go to college, get my degrees, all while having a child and not knowing who's going to watch my kid while I'm trying to finish up my last 60 units to get my bachelor's degree. You know what I'm saying? Driving the bus, riding the bus, all of those things. And so that's where this work comes from. It's near and dear to me. I am a direct product of the services and support and mentorship. I am a direct product of that. And here I am today doing the work that I do, pouring back into the community that once wrapped their arms around me.
That's a powerful, very powerful testimony. As we're getting to know each other more, that's if I had known that, I would have definitely picked that apart a little bit more. That's amazing. I think it's the definition of resiliency and persevering. And so, what better way than to give back through your own formative experience, directly through yourself, right? And so, now you've been blessed with these opportunities to be able to give back through these mentorships, through your work experiences, through your own personal life. And so it's all coming, I think, to me full circle. And
Absolutely.
so you mentioned going to school with while you have your kid. And so just an example, right? If you're at the Launchpad, we have our integrated daycare, our integrated computer lab, our
Right,
integrated food systems. And so we're
right.
thinking about developing, as you're saying, this holistic ecosystem.
Absolutely. Like I said, I went to, and I did mines in pieces. I first went and got my associate degree. Then I went on a transfer and got my bachelor's degree. And I didn't go back to school to 10 years later to get my master's degree. Once I had my second child. But again, that's when I moved to the Inland Empire and started being around all these people in the education system who were doctors and had all these degrees and all these other things. So it was like, it was imperative for me to go back and do the work that to get more get some more education under my belt, just on paper, but my experience exceeds the education that I have. I think sometimes people go to school and they're book smart, but when you have the actual experience and you can take the book work and apply it to real life, it makes the work way more authentic. And so that's where I am. That's what we do. We do holistic, whole person, authentic work. And that's something that I saw in Robert from the gate, from the beginning, was that he was very genuine. He wasn't like the rest of these people that I've come encounter with coming to the Inland Empire and working in this industry for as long as I've been in it. And he was just real genuine, and he had that fire and that passion that I had. And so, it was just, like I said, it just kind of we were meant to do this work.
I'm really thankful again for your time and your energy beyond this interview, the work that we're doing behind the scenes, right? And so we're gonna make it happen together collaboratively, and I'm excited to continue sharing space with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And this is to say this is the first time I've actually told my own personal story about,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay. Well, thank you.
on a platform.
Thank you for being very vulnerable to say the least, and that means a lot to us.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you all.